The journey toward purpose always begins in a place that is quiet, subtle, and often overlooked. It doesn't start with a grand event, a dramatic transformation, or a sudden realization. Instead, it begins with a gentle inner stirring, a kind of spiritual restlessness that you may not fully understand at first. It might feel like dissatisfaction with your current life, even if nothing is wrong on the surface. It might feel like a longing for something more meaningful, even though you cannot yet define what that more is. This quiet longing is the soul's first attempt to awaken your awareness. It is the beginning of the journey, the spark that lights the path toward discovering your deeper purpose. It is not loud and forceful. It is soft, persistent, and patient. You feel it in moments when you question the direction of your life, when your routines start feeling empty, or when your dreams and desires suddenly resurface after being ignored for years. This inner longing arises because the soul knows that your life is meant to have depth, authenticity, and fulfillment. It knows that beneath your daily responsibilities and external expectations, there is a unique purpose that only you can fulfill. But the soul cannot speak in words. It speaks in feelings, impulses, intuition, and the quiet urge to grow beyond where you are. When you feel this pull, it is not a sign that something is wrong. It is a sign that something inside you is ready to awaken. This longing pushes you to look inward instead of outward, to reflect on who you truly are rather than who you have been told to be. It invites you to question, to explore, and to seek meaning beyond the limits of your current life. At first, the longing can feel uncomfortable because it disrupts the familiar. You might find yourself asking deep questions. Why am I doing what I'm doing? What truly matters to me? What do I feel called to? These questions can be unsettling because they demand honesty. They require you to step away from the identity you've built for others and reconnect with the one that belongs solely to you. This discomfort is normal because awakening always disrupts the comfort of routine. But this disruption is necessary. It is the first step toward living a life aligned with your inner truth. The soul's longing often appears during moments of stillness. When life slows down, even for a moment, you may feel a whisper rising from within. It can happen during a walk, a quiet morning, a moment of frustration, or even in the middle of success. The soul doesn't care about timing or external circumstances. It only cares about truth. Even when your life seems fine, the longing reminds you that fine is not enough for the soul. The soul wants fullness, meaning, and authenticity. And so this longing arises again and again, subtly, until eventually you cannot ignore it. This longing is the invitation to begin the journey inward. It is the spark that encourages you to explore parts of yourself that have been overlooked or forgotten. It nudges you to reconnect with dreams you pushed aside, passions you abandoned, or truths you buried under responsibilities. It invites you to see life with new eyes and to ask whether the path you are on truly reflects who you are. And even though this stage is just the beginning, it is powerful because it marks the moment when your inner world begins to awaken. It is the moment when you realize that something inside you wants to grow, expand, and come alive. This awakening also brings a sense of curiosity. You start paying attention to your own thoughts and feelings with more awareness. You notice what excites you, what drains you, what feels meaningful, and what feels empty. You begin to sense that there is a deeper dimension of yourself waiting to be discovered. This curiosity is a sign that the soul is becoming active, guiding you toward more alignment, more authenticity, and more truth. The longing itself is not the purpose, but it is the doorway to it. It prepares you for the next steps by creating a shift inside you. It softens your resistance to change, increases your sensitivity to inner signals, and opens your heart to new possibilities. Without this longing, you might never stop to question your life. You might continue living on the surface, following habits and expectations without realizing that something deeper is calling for attention. As this longing grows, you may begin to see signs or patterns. You might find yourself drawn to certain ideas, people, or activities without knowing why. You may feel an urge to explore new directions or leave behind old ones. These are not random coincidences. They are the soul's guidance, moving you closer to your true purpose. But this is only the beginning. This first spark of restlessness naturally leads you into the next phase, recognizing the signals of the soul. Because once the longing awakens, it doesn't stay silent. It begins guiding you more clearly through emotions, intuition, dreams, and the subtle signs that point toward the life you are meant to live. After understanding that the soul holds a quiet longing for purpose, the next step is learning to recognize the subtle signals through which this longing speaks. Many people expect purpose to arrive dramatically, like a sudden revelation or a loud awakening, but in reality, the soul rarely communicates this way. It whispers rather than shouts, nudging you gently rather than pulling you violently. Point 2 is about becoming sensitive to these inner signals. Noticing the moments when something inside you stirs, tightens, warms, or lights up. These signals are often small, yet they carry remarkable clarity once you learn how to listen. Most people overlook these signals because they are buried beneath noise. The noise comes from external pressures, expectations, fears, and the fast pace of daily life. When your mind is constantly racing, when all your attention is focused on tasks, obligations, and the opinions of others, the inner voice becomes nearly impossible to hear. The soul does not compete for your attention. It waits patiently. It waits for silence, for stillness, for honesty. Learning to recognize its signals begins with slowing down internally, even if your outer world remains busy. It means pausing long enough to sense what resonates and what drains you, what feels aligned and what feels like a burden. Often, the soul's signals appear as subtle emotions. It might be a feeling of discomfort when you're living in a way that contradicts your deeper truth. It might be a sudden calmness when you think about a choice that feels right, even if it scares you. It could be a small spark of joy when you imagine doing something meaningful, something that reflects who you really are. These emotions may not make sense logically at first, but the soul's language is symbolic. It speaks in sensations, intuitions, and reactions that bypass the intellectual mind. You begin to recognize your inner guidance by observing how your body and your emotions respond to certain thoughts, people, and paths. Sometimes the soul's signals come in the form of repeated patterns. You may notice the same message appearing through different situations, the same feeling returning during certain conversations, or the same dream theme resurfacing again and again. Jung called this the way of the unconscious communicating through symbols and synchronicities. When the same internal message keeps returning, it usually means you are being guided towards something essential. These patterns are not coincidences, they are invitations to pay attention. They pull you toward the direction your life wants you to take. Another way the soul speaks is through restlessness. Many people misunderstand restlessness as a sign that something is wrong. In truth, restlessness often appears when something inside you is ready to grow beyond your current circumstances. It's the soul pushing against the walls of a life that has become too small, too predictable, or too disconnected from your deeper nature. Restlessness is not a punishment. It is a message that your inner world is shifting and that you are meant to move forward, to expand, to seek alignment. When you learn to interpret restlessness as guidance rather than frustration, it becomes a compass pointing toward transformation. Curiosity is another powerful signal. Something captures your attention without effort. When you feel pulled toward a subject, a skill, a place, or an idea for reasons you can't fully explain, that pull is often the soul reaching out. Deep curiosity is different from fleeting interest. It doesn't fade quickly. It stays with you, tapping you gently on the shoulder, reminding you of what feels meaningful. Many people ignore their curiosity because they fear uncertainty or because they were taught that curiosity isn't practical. But in Jungian understanding, curiosity is the psyche's way of guiding you toward what you are meant to explore, understand, or become. There are also moments of inner resistance that communicate just as strongly. If something consistently drains you, exhausts you, or fills you with heaviness, it is likely misaligned with your deeper purpose. The soul resists what does not belong in your path. This resistance is not laziness or weakness. It is internal truth trying to protect you from forcing yourself into a life that is not yours. Many people push through this resistance for years without realizing they are going against their own nature. Learning to recognize this signal requires honesty, because it often challenges the expectations you have placed on yourself or absorbed from society. One of the most profound signals from the soul is the feeling of inner expansion. This is when something makes you feel more alive, more connected, more present, even if it is difficult or requires effort. Inner expansion does not always feel comfortable, but it feels meaningful. It feels real. It feels like you are stepping towards something important. When the soul expands, there is a sense of, yes, this is right, even if the mind still has doubts. This is one of the clearest signs of alignment with purpose. To recognize these signals more clearly, you must practice inner listening. Inner listening means observing your reactions without immediately judging them. It means asking yourself questions like, what makes me feel alive? What makes me feel empty? Where do I feel a sense of connection? Where do I feel resistance? What returns to my mind again and again? What do I avoid facing even though a part of me knows I should? These questions open the door to deeper awareness, allowing the soul's voice to rise above the noise. Sometimes the signals appear most clearly during moments of solitude, when you sit quietly with yourself, without distractions, without trying to force answers. Inner world begins to speak. May speak through memories you suddenly remember, through emotions you finally allow yourself to feel, or through a clarity that emerges unexpectedly. This clarity is not loud, but it is steady. It feels like a truth that has been waiting for you to notice it. Solitude is not about withdrawing from life. It is about returning to your inner foundations so you can move forward with strength and authenticity. Another powerful place where the soul speaks is through discomfort. When you're living in alignment with your purpose, challenges feel meaningful. But when you're out of alignment, discomfort feels like emptiness, confusion, or emotional numbness. Many people fear discomfort, but in Jungian terms, discomfort is often a gateway. It reveals where you are disconnected from yourself, pushing you to explore what is hidden. Discomfort is not a sign to run away. It is a sign to look within. As you learn to recognize these signals, you become more attuned to your inner world. You begin to trust the inner guidance that was always there but was previously drowned out. And this growing sensitivity naturally leads into the next point, which explores how the soul's longing transforms into vision and direction once you learn to listen deeply and consistently. Once you begin to recognize the signals of your soul, something subtle and powerful starts to happen inside you. The scattered feelings, intuitions, and moments of restlessness that once seemed random begin to form a clearer pattern. It is as if an inner map slowly reveals itself, showing you that your life has been leading you towards something meaningful all along. Point 3 is about understanding how these signals transform into a deeper sense of direction, a quiet but steady vision that begins guiding your steps. This vision doesn't appear all at once. It grows slowly, like the first glow of dawn. At first it's only a faint outline, a feeling more than a plan. But as you pay attention, it becomes stronger, more defined, more undeniable. This is the stage where your inner world begins to shift in a noticeable way. You start sensing what feels right for you at a deeper level. You begin to understand which paths nourish you and which ones drain you. This clarity does not come from logic alone. It comes from alignment. When you align with the truth inside you, even the smallest insight feels profound. You may not know exactly where you are headed, but you begin to see the direction your life wants to move toward. And this direction feels honest. It feels like something you have always known but were afraid to trust. Many people wait for a perfect plan before moving forward, but the soul rarely gives fully detailed instructions. Instead, it gives one step at a time. It offers gentle nudges, glimpses, and realizations. You might feel drawn to explore something new, change something old, or let go of something that no longer fits who you are becoming. These feelings are not random impulses, they are the early shape of your purpose forming within you. And the more you follow them, the clearer your inner direction becomes. You develop a sense of guidance that does not come from the outside world but from your inner truth. During this stage, you may also feel a shift in your desires. Things that once excited you may no longer feel meaningful, while things you never considered before suddenly begin to call you. This change can feel confusing, but it is a natural part of inner alignment. Your desires begin to reflect who you truly are, not who you were taught to be. Jung often said that purpose expresses itself through deep, authentic desires, because those desires are shaped by the unconscious wisdom of the soul. When you begin to crave meaning instead of approval, growth instead of comfort, truth instead of perfection, you are stepping closer to your real path. Along with new desires, you might notice new strengths emerging. These strengths may not be dramatic at first. They may appear as small inclinations or natural talents that feel effortless when you use them. You may realize you're good at guiding others, expressing ideas, creating beauty, solving problems, or seeing patterns that others miss. These aren't coincidences. They are clues. The strengths that feel natural are often the very tools you were meant to use on your path. Purpose does not demand that you become someone else. It asks you to grow into the fullest version of who you already are. As the inner direction becomes clearer, something else also happens. Things that are not aligned with your purpose start to fall away. This can be uncomfortable. You may lose interest in certain habits, relationships, or environments. You may find yourself questioning old routines or values that once seemed important. This is not a sign that you are failing. It is a sign that you are evolving. When your inner world shifts, your outer world must adjust to match it. And though this process can feel uncertain, it is also liberating. Letting go of what no longer fits creates space for what truly belongs in your life. During this point, one of the most important realizations emerges. Purpose is not something outside of you waiting to be found. It is something inside you waiting to be expressed. The more you listen to your inner signals, the more you realize that your soul has always known the direction. You were simply not trained to listen. But now, with greater awareness, courage begins to grow. You begin to trust the small steps. You begin to trust the quiet voice. You begin to trust yourself. As your inner direction strengthens, your relationship with uncertainty changes. You no longer need every detail to feel safe. You don't need guarantees or perfect conditions. You start to understand that uncertainty is not the enemy. It is the space where transformation happens. You learn to move forward even with incomplete clarity, because the direction feels right. And as you take each step, the path becomes brighter. Clarity grows through movement, not through waiting. At this stage, synchronicities often appear more frequently. You meet the right people at the right time. Opportunities arise when you finally decide to take a step. Ideas come when you create space for them. These experiences might seem like coincidences, but they are signs that your inner and outer worlds are aligning. Jung believed that when you move toward your true path, life begins to support that movement. It is as if the universe responds to your inner alignment by placing the next stepping stones in front of you. This growing sense of direction brings a new kind of calm. You may still face challenges, uncertainties, or fears, but deep underneath you feel a sense of groundedness. You sense that you are moving towards something meaningful, something that fits the shape of your soul, and this feeling becomes more valuable than temporary comfort or external approval. It becomes your compass. And now, as this sense of direction becomes stronger, the next natural step emerges. The inner vision you are forming must eventually turn into real movement, into courage, into action. And this leads directly to point 4, where the longing for purpose transforms into the willingness to step out of your old self and into the life that your soul has been quietly calling you to create. As you move into the next stage of this inner journey, you begin to feel the tension between who you have been and who you are becoming. You've already awakened to the signals of your soul, and you've begun to understand the subtle guidance that comes from within. But now you start facing the inner resistance that rises up whenever you try to follow that deeper direction. This resistance is not a mistake or a sign that you are on the wrong path. In fact, it is the clearest sign that you are touching something important. Whenever you move closer to your truth, the parts of you that have lived in fear, habit, or old identity begin to react. They cling to the familiar, even if the familiar is painful or limiting. This is the moment when you meet your inner barriers face to face. These inner barriers often come disguised as doubts, excuses, or anxieties. You might start questioning whether you are capable enough, strong enough, or worthy enough to follow the direction your soul is pointing toward. You might find yourself imagining worst-case scenarios, fearing disappointment, or worrying about how others will react if you change. These reactions are natural. They come from the part of you that was built to protect you, not to free you. It tries to keep you safe by keeping you small. But now you're beginning to understand that safety without growth is another form of imprisonment. As this resistance rises, you may feel conflicted. One part of you feels pulled toward purpose, while another part pushes you back into old patterns. This inner tension creates emotional heaviness, confusion, or self-doubt. But instead of seeing this tension as a problem, you can begin to see it as a doorway. Resistance reveals exactly where you are still holding on to old beliefs about yourself. It shows you the places inside you that have not yet been healed, accepted, or understood. And by bringing them into awareness, you gain the chance to transform them. This stage, deeply psychological because it requires you to confront the structures of your inner world. You begin seeing the stories you've been telling yourself. Stories about what you can and cannot do, stories about what you deserve, stories inherited from family, culture, or past traumas. Many of these stories were written long before you were conscious of them. Jung believed that much of our suffering comes from living with ideas that do not belong to our true selves. When you feel resistance, you are often feeling those inherited ideas tightening their grip. The soul pushes toward truth, while the mind holds on to old identity. This internal struggle may show up as procrastination, avoidance, emotional numbness, or sudden busyness designed to distract you from change. You might feel exhausted or overwhelmed, not because the path ahead is impossible, but because you are wrestling with your own depth. This is the moment when compassion becomes essential. Instead of fighting yourself, you begin listening to yourself. Instead of forcing action, you start understanding why certain parts of you are afraid. When you listen deeply, you realize that resistance comes from wounds, not weakness. It comes from past experiences where you felt judged, abandoned, misunderstood, or hurt. It comes from moments when being your true self felt unsafe. So now, as you stand on the edge of purpose, the past echoes through your emotions. But recognizing this gives you power. You begin to separate who you truly are from the fears that were formed long ago. This separation creates space for healing, and healing creates space for transformation. As you understand your resistance, something begins to shift. You stop seeing your fears as enemies and start seeing them as parts of yourself that need attention. Instead of suppressing your doubts, you acknowledge them. Instead of denying your fears, you allow them to speak. And in doing so, you discover that fear loses its control the moment it is met with awareness. What once felt like a wall now becomes a window, revealing the deeper truth behind the fear. And the deeper truth is this: resistance is a sign that you care. You fear losing something because part of you finally understands the value of what you're stepping into. You fear change because you sense its power. You fear failure because your purpose matters. These fears are not obstacles, they are invitations. They ask you to become larger than the stories you've lived inside. They ask you to step into the self that has been quietly growing behind the scenes. As you confront these inner barriers, a new strength begins to rise within you. You start trusting your inner direction more deeply because you now understand why the resistance appears. You realize that courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to move through fear with awareness. This is the pivot point where purpose stops being a distant dream and becomes a living possibility. You no longer see resistance as a sign to stop, but as a sign to continue, carefully, consciously, and bravely. And this naturally leads you to the next stage, where the work of confronting resistance opens the door to embracing your deeper, authentic desires. As you move deeper into your inner journey and begin facing the resistance that has lived inside you for so long, something important starts to happen. Beneath the fear, the doubt, and the old stories, you begin to uncover what your soul truly wants. These desires are not the surface-level wants created by society or shaped by comparison. They are not about proving yourself, gaining approval, or chasing achievements that leave you empty. These desires come from a deeper place, a place untouched by fear or expectation. They arise from the core of who you are, and for the first time you feel them with clarity and honesty. This stage is about embracing those authentic desires and letting them guide you toward the life you are meant to live. Authentic desires often reveal themselves quietly at first. You might feel a pull toward a certain direction, a curiosity, a dream that never fully went away no matter how many times you pushed it aside. Sometimes these desires appear through longing, an ache in your chest when you imagine a different life, a different path, or a different way of being. Other times they appear as a spark, a sudden excitement or inspiration that feels too real to ignore. These inner movements are not random. They are the language of your deeper self, expressing what truly matters to you. The reason these desires stayed hidden for so long is because resistance, fear, and old conditioning were covering them. When you were focused on trying to fit in, survive, or meet expectations, it was difficult to hear your soul's quieter voice. But now that you have begun confronting your inner barriers, the noise inside you becomes softer. You can hear the truth beneath it. You can feel what you actually want, not what you were taught to want. And this realization is incredibly freeing. As you begin embracing your true desires, you also start recognizing how important they are. They are not selfish. They are not unrealistic. They are not childish dreams. They are the roadmap your soul has always held for you. Jung believed that our deepest desires reflect the hidden blueprint of our individuality. They reveal the life we are meant to grow into. When you deny them, you deny your own nature. When you follow them, you begin to flourish. Embracing these desires requires courage, because it often means letting go of what is familiar. You may realize that certain relationships, habits, or environments no longer align with who you are becoming. This can create discomfort, but it also creates space. When you stop forcing yourself to be someone you're not, you free energy that has been trapped in confusion and resistance. That energy becomes fuel for transformation. It becomes the force that helps you move forward with intention. As you connect more deeply with your authentic desires, you begin to notice a powerful shift. Your decisions feel clearer. You no longer make choices based solely on fear or obligation. Instead, you choose based on alignment. You choose what brings you meaning, what brings you peace, and what strengthens your connection to yourself. Even the smallest decisions begin to reflect who you truly are. This is the beginning of living with integrity, where your inner truth matches your outer actions. You also start discovering passions that may have been suppressed or forgotten. These passions are not always grand or dramatic. They may be simple but deeply fulfilling. They might show up in creativity, in learning, in helping others, in expression, in exploration, or in quiet pursuits that bring you a sense of wholeness. The size of the desire does not matter. What matters is that it resonates with your soul. And when something resonates at that level, it becomes a crucial part of your purpose. One of the most important realizations during this stage is that your desires are not random impulses. They are expressions of your inner wisdom. They show you what your life is meant to hold. They guide you toward the experiences that will grow you, shape you, and reveal your potential. When you say yes to them, you are saying yes to your own evolution. When you ignore them, you remain trapped in a life that feels empty or misaligned. As you embrace your desires, you may also encounter emotional healing. Many of your deeper wants were once buried because you believed you weren't worthy of them. Now, as you allow yourself to want again, you begin healing those old beliefs. You reconnect with your inner child, your unexpressed dreams, your forgotten passions. You start remembering the parts of you that were abandoned along the way. This process brings your fragmented self back together. It reconnects the past you with the present you in a way that feels whole and honest. And something else happens. Your sense of purpose becomes clearer. The longing that once felt hidden or vague now begins to take shape. You understand why certain things never felt right for you. You understand why your soul resisted certain paths. You understand that meaning can only grow in soil that is authentic. And you finally understand that your desires are not distractions from your purpose. They are the doorway to it. By embracing these desires, you prepare yourself for the next stage of the journey, where purpose stops being an inner feeling and begins to take form in the world. This is where you begin aligning your actions with what your soul is calling for. This is where inner truth becomes outer movement. This is where the life meant for you starts becoming real. As you step into the next stage of your inner journey, the desires you've uncovered begin asking for something real. They are no longer just feelings or quiet whispers in the background of your mind. They start becoming stronger, clearer, and more insistent, inviting you to move from inner awareness to outer action. This stage is about aligning your life with what your soul truly wants, and this alignment is where purpose begins to take form in the world. Up until now, much of the journey has happened within you. Awakening the longing, recognizing the signals, confronting resistance, and embracing your authentic desires. But now comes the moment when the inner world and the outer world meet. This is where your choices begin shaping your path. Aligning action with purpose does not mean making dramatic changes all at once. It starts slowly, with small decisions that reflect your inner truth. It may be choosing to prioritize what nourishes you instead of what drains you. It may be setting boundaries with people who hold you back. It may be making time for something that brings you alive, even if just for a few minutes each day. What matters is not the size of the action, but the direction. When your actions begin to match your authentic desires, even the smallest steps carry enormous power. This alignment brings a new kind of clarity. Before, your desires might have felt abstract or uncertain. But once you begin living in a way that honors them, they become more real. You feel them in your body, in your energy, in your emotional state. You begin to wake up with a sense of intention rather than confusion. Decisions that once felt heavy now feel guided. You start seeing which paths feel aligned and which ones feel empty. And slowly, your inner compass becomes stronger than external expectations. As you take these steps, you may notice shifts in your relationships, your routines, or your sense of self. Some people may not understand your changes, especially if they were used to the older version of you who suppressed their desires or stayed silent about their truth. But this is not a sign that you are wrong. It is a sign that you are evolving. Growth always requires letting go of what was built on your old identity. The more you honor your inner direction, the more your outer life begins reshaping itself to match who you are becoming. This stage also brings moments of discomfort because taking action means stepping into uncertainty. But uncertainty becomes less frightening when it aligns with your truth. You begin realizing that discomfort is not a warning to stop, but a sign that you are moving beyond your limitations. Every time you act from your authentic self, you weaken the grip of your old fears. You begin building confidence, not from external achievements, but from the simple fact that you are living honestly. You may also notice synchronicities becoming more frequent. Opportunities appear. Conversations happen at just the right time. You meet people who inspire you or push you forward. This is not magic or coincidence. This is alignment. When you move toward your purpose, life begins to respond. Jung believed that when the inner world shifts, the outer world reorganizes to meet it. So when you take steps toward your purpose, the world mirrors that movement by opening new doors. As you continue aligning your actions with your desires, you find yourself becoming more resilient. Challenges don't discourage you as easily because your motivation comes from within, not from needing approval or validation. You start taking responsibility for your growth. You stop waiting for the right moment and realize the right moment is created through action. And with every step, your sense of purpose becomes more tangible. This is also the stage where self-trust strengthens. When you take action that reflects your truth, you show yourself that you are capable of change. You show yourself that you are willing to live the life your soul longs for. This builds a relationship with your inner self that is unshakable. You no longer rely solely on logic to make decisions. You rely on intuition, emotion, and inner wisdom. This integration creates a sense of inner stability that cannot be easily broken. Another powerful transformation happens during this stage. Your identity begins to shift. You stop defining yourself by your past or your fears. You start defining yourself by your growth, your courage, and your authenticity. Your life begins to feel more meaningful because your actions are connected to something real inside you. This deepens your sense of purpose and prepares you for the next stage of the journey. You begin to understand that purpose is not a single event or a final destination. It is a continuous alignment between your inner self and your outer life. As long as your actions reflect your truth, you are living with purpose, even if the path is not fully clear yet. And with each aligned action, you strengthen the bridge between who you are and who you are becoming. This naturally leads you to the final stage, where the alignment between your inner truth and your outer actions evolves into a life lived in harmony with your purpose. A life that feels meaningful, grounded, and deeply connected to your soul. As you move into this final point, everything you have explored so far begins to come together, almost like pieces of a puzzle that were scattered across your inner world. You begin to realize that the shadow is not an enemy you must defeat, nor a burden you must carry forever. It is a part of you that has been waiting patiently for acknowledgement, waiting for a moment when you would be ready to turn toward it, instead of running away. And now, having walked through the layers of fear, understanding, acceptance, and integration, you reach a place where inner harmony is no longer an idea. It becomes an experience, something you can feel in the quiet spaces within yourself. There is a subtle shift at this stage, a kind of internal awakening, where you no longer see your darkness as something that diminishes you. Instead, you begin to sense that your shadow has always held a part of your strength, a part of your truth, a part of your raw, unfiltered humanity. You start to understand that wholeness does not mean perfection. It means allowing every part of yourself to exist without shame. It means reclaiming the pieces you abandoned long ago because they did not fit the version of yourself the world demanded you to be. Now, you see that those pieces were not flaws. They were simply parts of your story that needed gentleness to be understood. At this point, your relationship with yourself begins to transform. You no longer walk through life trying to hide pieces of your identity or suppress your emotions. You allow yourself to feel, to respond, to express your needs without guilt. You recognize your triggers as messages instead of weaknesses. You see your emotions as signals rather than problems. You understand that anger might be asking for boundaries, that sadness might be calling for healing, and that fear might be revealing where you have yet to trust yourself. Instead of rejecting these emotions, you welcome them as teachers, each one offering insight into the next step of your inner evolution. This acceptance brings a deeper sense of inner peace. Not the kind that comes from avoiding conflict or keeping everything on the surface calm, but the kind that grows from knowing yourself fully and standing firmly in that truth. You no longer fight your shadow because you have learned how to listen to it. You no longer fear your darker thoughts because you have learned how to hold them with awareness. You no longer feel fractured inside because you can finally see how every part of you belongs. And as this understanding settles into your soul, you begin to feel a quiet confidence emerging. A steady presence that shapes the way you move through the world. From this place, life begins to look different. Challenges that once overwhelmed you now feel manageable because you trust your own resilience. Situations that used to trigger you no longer control you because you understand the roots beneath them. You start to make choices that align with your true self instead of choices that simply avoid discomfort. You begin to express your authenticity more freely, without apologizing for who you are or dimming your light to make others comfortable. And strangely, as you allow yourself to be more honest with your inner world, your outer world begins to shift as well. You attract relationships that reflect your growth, opportunities that match your inner strength, and experiences that resonate with your deeper purpose. At this stage, integration becomes a living process, not a one-time event. You understand that there will always be moments of imbalance. Moments when old patterns resurface or when life pushes you into unfamiliar territory. But now, instead of seeing these moments as setbacks, you see them as invitations to return to yourself. Each challenge becomes another chance to practice what you have learned, to meet your shadow with compassion, and to honor the commitment you have made to your own inner wholeness. You realize that the goal was never to eliminate the shadow. It was to build a relationship with it, one rooted in understanding rather than fear. This growing sense of harmony brings with it a new kind of freedom, one that comes from no longer being ruled by the parts of yourself you once avoided. You feel lighter not because life has become easier, but because you have become stronger. You feel more grounded, not because everything is perfect, but because you know how to return to yourself when the world becomes overwhelming. And perhaps the most powerful shift of all is that you begin to trust your own journey, even the parts that are still unfolding, even the parts that are unclear. You trust that every step you take, whether through darkness or light, is shaping you into someone more whole, more aware, and more aligned with your true essence. And as this realization settles into your being, you begin to understand that the journey of integrating your shadow is ultimately the journey of returning home to yourself. You see that the fear, the darkness, the discomfort, none of it was a detour. It was the path. It was the place where your strength was forged, where your clarity was sharpened, where your true voice was discovered. And now, standing at this point in the journey, you can finally feel the quiet truth that has been guiding you all along. That wholeness was never something you needed to earn. It was something you needed to uncover, something that was always within you, waiting for you to be ready to see it.